Welcome back to another episode of the AIM Show. Today, I am honored to have Jack Landry on the show. Welcome. I just really wanted to delve into your story from the beginning. You've had a really, really long story from being an athlete to having surgery and all these different injuries and stuff. But I guess, how would you describe your upbringing and what are the early moments that shaped your understanding of, I guess, manhood, purpose, from being a football player to having all those difficulties in that sense?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, first off, thanks, Alan. I just appreciate you having me on the show, and I'm excited to even learn more about your story and your show. But I know you're doing work for the kingdom, so just thank you so much for putting this message out there, bringing people together just to learn from other people's walks of life. And I'm able to learn from you and the audience just as much as they were able to learn from me. So thanks so much for that. And yeah, my story growing up, the most important thing that really shaped who I am today is the household that I grew up in. So I grew up in a house of six kids. I was the oldest of six, two incredible parents, and was super blessed, something that a lot of people don't have today, which is growing up in a strong household. So my parents, the most important thing my parents taught me was that if we feel like we're capable of it, then we can achieve it. And really, the way that manifested was through academics. So my parents knew very well that if we actually applied ourselves, we put in the time and effort, we could get all A's. So basically, the rule, unwritten rule in the house was like everybody has to get A's. And if we weren't getting A's, then there was probably most likely a problem. Like we weren't showing up the way that we knew we were capable of. So that was just something that kind of shaped the rest of my life. And as I've gotten into entrepreneurship, but also my walk with God, it's a little bit different because what that did teach me was like, okay, for every certain amount of input, you can expect a certain amount of output. And it's the same with kind of physical fitness. It often is the same in corporate, but not necessarily. But if you interview for enough jobs or you produce enough at your current job, you're going to get that promotion. You're going to get the raise. But what I saw in entrepreneurship and my walk with God is sometimes you'll be going through a season and you feel like you're putting out so much effort or time, or like you're giving, or with God, like you're being patient and you don't always see the result that you're looking for. So, but that was really just a good foundation, because it taught me that most things are in my control and it really depends on how I decide to show up. And I can either be the one who's in control of my life or play a victim to the situations in my life. So that was really important in my story. And then really just, my dad set an incredible role model for me growing up, and my dad kind of showed me what it looked like to be a man, which to me, what he imparted to me was you take care of the people around you, the women around you, the kids around you, your boys. You have integrity. You keep your word to everybody, first and foremost yourself. You treat people with respect. You hold doors. You honor older people. You honor the military. You have respect for those who are serving us. And yeah, he just really showed me, like, from a character and value perspective, what's important as being somebody who is dependable, somebody that provides, who people can trust, and who can also lead people. So that's kind of where I grew up. I grew up in Catholic church. I grew up in Catholic school all the way through the end of high school. I'm not a confirmed Catholic. I don't practice Catholicism, but that definitely shaped my early faith and my knowledge of God and Jesus. And yeah, just some of those foundational things that my parents taught me, my father taught me, that kind of shaped where I am right now. And like me dealing with 5 back fractures and persevering through that and being able to walk on and play college football, and then kind of my path in the corporate world. All that was foundational. Like it literally started with me learning to get all A's, and then from there I was able to walk on. I was able to move through 5 back fractures, go and work for Amazon, go and start my first company doing data analytics consulting, and then do what I do now, which is coaching young men. So it's been a blessing to have that type of family structure, and that's also why it's so important for me to, right, the seed in the foundation of any family is the couple. So that's the reason I talk a lot about, like, making sure you're finding the right woman, but more so becoming the man who will attract the right woman.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really important. I think there's a lack of that. So that's really beautiful that you could experience and have a family and a father figure that could encourage you, one, inspire you, lead you to all those different things. Because I'm also blessed to have that as well. And I think oftentimes when you have that, you don't realize what it's like to not have that. So it's definitely something that is extremely powerful when you do have, and trying to take a step back and looking at like, oh my gosh, that was such a blessing to have, to be able to experience that. Um, but I guess, when did you first experience or sense that God was calling you to something more than the life that you were living when you were doing football and all those different things?
Yeah, the first time I really felt it heavy was I'd gotten baptized in 2018 when I graduated college. I had a 4-year relationship, a girl I dated at the end of high school all the way through the end of college. And that came to an abrupt end. I found myself for the first time super depressed, full of anxiety. I was smoking weed every day. I was drinking and I was blackout drunk, drunk driving. And it was at that time I found a church through a family friend in the town. And for the first time, I kind of heard the word of God and preached in a way that sounded like such truth. And not only that, but the pastor was able to present it in a way where it was so applicable to my life.
Mm.
And at that point, I just started rekindling my relationship with God, which basically had been dead throughout college. I honestly really would say I didn't even truly have a relationship with God. Up until that point, I just had a knowledge of God. And yeah, that ended up leading me to get baptized in 2018. But it wasn't really until a couple of years later, a while later actually, it was in 2022, and I was starting to pursue God on a daily basis because God says, right, first and foremost, you shouldn't have any other gods before me. I should be first. So if God's first, it would make logical sense that we're starting our day with God first.
Mm.
And started doing that. So every single morning, I was in my devotional, I was in the Word, and I was in prayer. And at the time, I was in a casual relationship. I was living in San Diego, planning to leave San Diego in a couple months, and was dating a girl with no intention to actually make it something serious. And at the same time, I was praying for a wife, and I just felt like God was like, dude, if you're looking for a wife, you need to steward your current environment for me to bless you with that. But why would I bless you with that when you have a casual relationship where there's no intention to date further or to marry, when you're being physical with this woman and you're not being obedient to how I call you to steward a relationship? So that was kind of when I kind of first felt God like telling me to act differently. And that caused me to, first and foremost, I stepped away from having casual relationships. But even then, like, my walk with God was not like this one moment where like I surrendered everything and was super obedient. It was honestly me trying to get the best of God and the best of my world, which ended up just delaying the process of what God could have done in my life. And what he was planning to do, he's done. But yeah, at first I stepped away from casual relationships, but I was still like, when I was in a serious relationship, I was still having sex. And then it finally got to the point where God convicted me. It's like, dude, if you want the abundance of what I can give you in a relationship, then you need to give the entire relationship to me, which includes your physical desires. So that was really the first time I felt like God was calling me just to lead my life differently. And it kind of came through the relationships. And then, yeah, there was a handful of other
Mm.
instances, but that was the beginning.
That's cool. I think oftentimes a man's calling to God comes through struggle or hardship or pain. And I kind of want to talk about what that looked like for you. So, behind um, every public transformation and every public victory, there's always a private war that not many people show. For you, you're very open about this, and I know you talked about in your testimony how you want to connect with people and be authentic, and I really appreciate that because there's not a lot of people that do that anymore. But I kind of want to dive into your like what you dealt with, like your anxiety, addiction, and disillusionment, what did your lowest point look like, and what did you believe about yourself during that time?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good question. I like the introduction as well about kind of the struggle or the adversity that we face ends up shaping who we're meant to be. And I saw a post a couple days ago, and it went something like this, which is your calling is going to end up crushing you. Because if you think about it, somebody who is meant to help and support people who have dealt with childhood trauma, that person is going to have to walk through a season of that themselves, because otherwise there's no way they would be equipped to do so. Somebody who's going to help people who are coming out of broken marriages, they're probably, unfortunately, going to experience that themselves. But that pain and adversity is actually going to empower them to serve others. So I think that's incredible. And the lowest point, definitely for me, was when I left a serious relationship. And it was the relationship I left where God was like, dude, you got to stop having sex. And the woman at the time, she didn't believe in God, so we weren't equally yoked, and we just couldn't come to agreement on how we wanted to lead the relationship forward. And that was painful for me because at the time I felt like that relationship had potential. And she was a good girl. I had a lot of respect for her. We had a lot of fun. But I knew that what God had for me was so much better. And I was so convicted that I would only experience the best thing I possibly could in my life if I actually was obedient to God, that I had to leave. But leaving was the most painful thing I've ever done. And through that process of like really the 9 months following that, it was just I was just in so much like pain and depression because that relationship had gotten a hold on me. And there was even a little, no, I wouldn't even say a little bit, there was actually clearly a soul tie there because the relationship was very physical. So not only was there the pain of leaving the relationship and a good person behind, but there was the pain that came with the physical bond that we had built. And that led to torment, that led to anxiety, that led to literally having being tortured in my mind and almost having this obsessive pain where it was so hard for me to move on because I was so attached to what had happened in the past. And I just remember I was in San Diego. I didn't have a lot of contact with friends at the time, and I would just go on these walks every single day. I was actually preparing for my bodybuilding competition at the time, and I would walk every single day. And I just remember praying to God every single day while I was walking, like, I don't fully understand what's going on here, but I know you're working this for good. And I just pray that you help prepare me and mold me to go through the season and strengthen me to do what's right, to see what's your will. I pray that anything that is from you, you open a door, and if it's not from you, that you close that door. But that was really a place where that was the place where I truly learned to depend on God, because it would have been so easy for me to kind of drop my morals and values and what God was calling me to do and just go back to that relationship. But I knew God was calling me elsewhere, and I trusted Him. And His plan was never to like bless me with a godly woman like 2 weeks or 2 months later. There was so much shaping and molding in that process, but I'm so thankful for it. And yeah, that also taught me a lot about leaning into the in between, I like to call it, because the destination is something that we can get so obsessed with. And if we're always obsessed with the destination, we're forward thinking. Typically, when we're forward thinking, that causes anxiety, it causes fear. And if we can remove ourselves from the destination and actually look at what's going on right now in the in between, that's where like the real work is happening that's actually going to get us to that destination. So, where our character needs to change, where we need to figure out how we manage our time and our effort differently. So that's it. Also, really taught me to do that.
Mm. That last part where you said, it really reminds me of a quote where the person who likes walking will get farther than the person who likes the destination. It's like enjoying the journey or the process to becoming the best version of yourself, right? Like there's always going to be struggle. There's always going to be hardship. There's always going to be setbacks. There's always going to be things that you're going to deal with pain. And if you can enjoy and understand that that's the part of the process of life, then I think you can ultimately surpass every milestone that you have because you're enjoying the whole process of life. It's not just for
Yeah.
the happiness, or it's not just for feeling good, but it's for understanding that the whole process of life is going to have a range of emotions. It's going to have a range of feelings. And if you can embrace that, I think you can kind of like go so much farther than a lot of people can, I guess.
Heck yeah. Yeah, it's really good. There's always going to be a new destination, so you have to. It's so cliche, but you have to fall in love with the process.
For sure. Do you think you had like a refining moment or conversation that stirred something in you, or maybe like that told you, oh, you shouldn't do this? Like when you said you were in that relationship, was it just did you just feel conviction from God, or was there a conversation that stirred that, or maybe you were just like weren't meant to stay there?
Yeah, probably the most convicting conversation I ever had was it was also from a relationship where I was dating a girl who knew God, and she was like, I feel like God's telling me to tell you to surrender your full life to Him. And that was in 2021. And that just stuck with me because that was kind of the first time I had ever thought of this concept of surrender. And then I slowly started moving into a place in my life where all these little aspects of my life I was giving to God. I was like, dang, I want to do it this way, but I know God wants me to do it this way. And as I pursued Him more, I started to see His hand more in my life, which motivated me more to find out like how much of God can I actually experience. And really, where that conviction to stop having sex came from was just because I was pursuing God so deeply. And the closer and closer I got to God, the more he reveals himself to you and the more he reveals his truth in these things that sound like just rules. When we look at them at a surface level, you actually start to understand, and God reveals through his spirit why he's calling you to be this way. And it starts to make logical sense. And you're like, okay, this does make sense. I understand what God's doing in this calling, and I trust God because he's always provided. He never fails on his promises. I trust that what is at the end of the obedience is something so much better. So that was just where it came from. Was, I wanted God first and foremost, and as I started pursuing that, then he starts to expose all of these other things in your life are keeping you from putting me first. And I've always been in the gym. I played, obviously, like you saw, I played football at the Division 1 level, and then I got into the bodybuilding post college. So I've loved the journey of self improvement. And the beautiful thing about the gym is it's like it's you versus you. And typically, that is one of those places where what you put in is what you get out. And then it became a part of my career and what I do and how I help people and how I make money. But then I also was looking at it where I was like, dude, you're spending 3 hours in the gym every single day. You're obsessed over eating 1 calorie over your macros. This is almost not actually like this is almost this has become an idol for you because you're so obsessed with how your physique looks and all these different pieces of you getting there that it's become more important. And the reason that I should say, you're typically able to see when something is an idol in your life, if it's more important than God in your life, if it causes you some type of stress, anxiety, or negative emotion. Because with God, those type of things, fear, they're not from God, right? God provides peace, He provides clarity, there's no confusion, there's no anxiety with God. So if something does have that in your life, that typically means you're in control and you're trying to control the outcome and you're placing more importance on that outcome than on God. And so I had to even let go of like, in knocking down idols is a continuous daily thing, but I had to surrender all these idols like my own image, my physique, my pride, all these type of things. So yeah, all that to say, it's like if you truly believe what God has is best, then that's going to actually lead you to seek Him. And the more and more you seek Him and get closer, He's going to just continue to show you the way. Like, okay, you want to experience everything I have for you, then this is the path. And typically that ends up meaning we have to leave behind some of our idols and some of the things we used to like to do that we thought were better than God, but actually we realized they're not.
Yeah, that was very powerful because honestly, the fitness part where you talked about macros and being super particular about making that an idol. I've never thought about it in that perspective, but now that you mention it, it makes a lot of sense because I also am someone who used to be really strict on like, oh, I can't eat this much. I can only eat a certain amount of calories. And if I eat over that, then it's like I'm screwed or whatever it is. But if you look at it from like, if you take a step back and just look at it for what it is, it's like if you're so obsessed with one thing and you're obsessing over that more than you are obsessing about Jesus and God, then it truly is an idol. Like you're idolizing something that you shouldn't idolize, and it's a vice that you need to break. And I like how you put that because I don't think a lot of people think of it that way. I have a lot of friends who do a lot of bodybuilding and a lot of weightlifting, all these different things, and they're so obsessed with this minute details of how many calories I've eaten or how many of this or whatever it might be that it becomes a whole part of their life and they constantly stress about it. And it's oftentimes that what leads them into feeling like they can't do things. Like if you go out to eat, they can't eat anything because um, they have to hit their macros. Or if they want to do a certain thing, they can't because they have to be at the gym for 3 hours. And honestly,
Right.
that's a bit extreme. Like people, I know a lot of people, including myself, I'm guilty. I've gone to the gym for like 3+ hours and I'm like, what am I doing here for 3 hours? An hour, 2 hours, you can get a solid workout in. And being able to understand that if you compare yourself to others and your own self image will always, like, I've always been a person who takes comparison in a positive light, which is kind of unusual. I like taking comparison and saying, oh, if he could do it, I could do it. And I like that
Mhm.
kind of comparison. But I know a lot of people take comparison and say, oh, this guy has this and I don't. So I feel bad about myself. And I'm not saying that I don't have that, but I feel like if you can flip the comparison to saying, if he can do and achieve that, then why can't I achieve it? Because we're all created in the image of God and we all have our strengths and weaknesses. But if someone puts a limiting belief on yourself, which is not you, then I think that you can do what you put your mind to if um, you just stay consistent, push through the pain and all those different things. And I think you're a testament to that. I mean, you've gone through so much hardship and so much struggle, and you've come out with so much knowledge, so much like you're filled with knowledge. You have a lot of experience to draw from, and you know that the journey, the process of getting to success is more important than the destination. And a lot of people don't realize that because I think it's just not something a lot of people think of. It's like, oh, I want to get to this destination. Why do I have to think about the journey? It's like I want to go from point A to point Z without thinking about all the points in between.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah. From your addiction and from your struggles and all these different things, I think everyone has a hunger for more. Like you want more of something. It's a natural human desire. I want to kind of talk about what that looked like for you when you stepped into entrepreneurship and started doing the mentorship. So a lot of people, including myself, we dream to leave the 9 to 5 and pursue purpose and a God-given purpose, but not a lot of people do it. And you left the corporate world behind. So tell me about that leap and how did that go and how did you come convicted to change and do that kind of stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good question. Obviously, entrepreneurship isn't for everybody. Some people do have a calling to work a corporate job, which is a great thing, and there's a lot of good companies, and being part of a team is a really important role. So I think even sometimes when I talk about entrepreneurship, I'm sometimes careful about the light that I paint it in because I don't want to be like, if you're not an entrepreneur, like you're a loser. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, everybody has a different role, but for me, it came from a desire to be in a place of leadership and to really be in the driver's seat with building and creating the life I wanted. I think that always came from first and foremost my family. Like as the oldest of 6 kids, I kind of innately had that leadership position, and then I always knew early in my career like I wanted to do something else because for me I honestly hated responding to somebody else. I felt like I was basically building somebody else's dream. And I would be in those situations where somebody would be talking down to me or demeaning to me or instructing me, bossing me around just because they had a title above me. And because of my position, I had to uphold my integrity. And the only thing I could do was basically take it, where if I was in control, that wouldn't have been happening. So, and a little bit of my background in software engineering also, I think, contributed to it, because the part of software engineering that I really enjoyed was the architect piece, where I'm looking at the big picture and I'm designing a whole system. And it's the exact same with the business. So I never was like huge on the hands-on coding. I was an okay programmer, but not like outstanding. I liked the bigger picture design. So I always had these ideas of like how I could start my own business. I worked in the intersection of tech and finance. I did a lot of work with machine learning. So it was always something with like building a model for private equity or venture capital firms or some type of money management platform. But that ended up obviously not being the first thing that I moved into. The first thing that I moved into was just going self employed and starting my own consulting firm. So, really, what that looked like is I left Amazon, I went self employed. I had an opportunity to work a contracting gig where I would be on yearly contracts with this company. And so, the way I set it up was I set up my own S Corp. They paid my company, so it was business to business, and I paid myself as an employee of that company. What that did is it just opened up a lot of flexibility in terms of what I could do financially, but also what I could do with my lifestyle. And that's why I moved from California to Florida, because that gave me the opportunity to pay zero state tax. So I moved to Florida, set up the business, financially was in a great place. And I was really in a place where I could take on as many clients as I wanted, right? Because they were just working with my business, and then I was just the hands doing the work. I had the opportunity to hire out and bring on like employees myself if I wanted. I didn't really do much of that, but it was just a taste of like what time and financial freedom looked like. And at the end of it, I was on like a 45-hour a week gig for this one specific contract, but I would only do like 10 to 20 hours of work a week, because I had figured out how do I show up as optimal as possible and get as much productivity out there as I can in the shortest amount of time. And with that, I had all this free time to do what I wanted. And so that's why I started coaching on the side. I kind of had the initial idea for the coaching business in spring of 2022. I did a lot in terms of collecting content. I was trying to build a team of coaches and trainers throughout 2022. Came up to 2023, was still trying to put that team together, and kind of we had a trip where all the trainers came together in Miami in in winter of 2023. And I left that trip kind of feeling depleted, because I had spent all this time, money, and effort putting this team together. But really what I hadn't done is I hadn't paved the path as the leader. So sure, I was leading us by bringing us together and getting things done from a content perspective. But where I wasn't leading us was in our ultimate purpose, which was to serve people, because I hadn't served any clients yet. So that's when I was like, okay, I'm putting the cart before the horse. Let me just bring on some clients myself. And so in May of 2023, that's when I brought on my first 10 clients. I trained them. And since then, I've just continuing to build the foundation of something that will be larger than me. But yeah, it's really like, if it starts with having the vision. So even if I was working that self-employed job doing consulting in the data space, I could have stayed in that position for years. But after I had gone through this process of being transformed in my walk with God and in my personal development, I felt myself in a powerful position where it was like, this has radically changed my life so much. I want to be able to bring this to others. And what better way to do it than do it through something in all these areas that I'm so passionate about? So I kind of created that initial vision. And honestly, I felt like the initial vision was given to me from God. And once I had the vision, it was like, okay, I actually have to take steps toward that. And I decided, I could have just screwed off with my extra 20 hours a week, but I decided to build a foundation, do what I needed to do to ultimately leave that consulting job, which was in the fall of 2024, and go full time in the coaching business. So there's a way to do it that's smart and intelligent. I would never necessarily tell somebody to just jump ship and abandon everything they're doing unless they have the financial means to do so. Like you have some good savings, then I would say that's a great time to do it. Go all for it. But yeah, you have to have a vision for where you're going, and then you actually have to have a strong desire because if you just want to be self employed and you want to be an entrepreneur just because you don't want to listen to somebody else, well, that's not going to be enough of a motivation to keep you going through the periods of obstacle and adversity. So, yeah, that's kind of what that transition looked like for me and where my mindset was at the whole time.
Hmm. Hmm. Interesting. So you kind of always had the desire to do business. Similarly to me, I've always had the desire to feel like it always felt weird to work for someone else because it was like I'm also the eldest of three, and being naturally, I guess, older, you kind of have like leadership. I guess maybe it's just naturally inherent if you are older, and it just felt weird to have someone who could belittle you to build their own dream. Not to say that jobs are bad or anything, but um, it definitely is interesting that you say that as someone who's also the eldest, because it might be something that is like, I don't know, like just a natural thing that you gain from being the eldest person. You kind of fall into that natural leadership, so you kind of have the urge to do something that leads other people rather than being led by someone else. And obviously, as someone who follows Jesus, I'm not going to lead Jesus, but being able to surrender to Jesus and then lead others to him is my end goal. So whatever that might be, through business, through entrepreneurship, or whatever, I don't know, it could be this podcast, whatever it might be, trying to lead people to that is the end goal. But I like how you said that, because I don't think, or maybe I shouldn't say I don't think, but I think a lot of people think that it's bad to lead, or they might think that having a job is a bad thing. And I think I like how you said entrepreneurship, or the people who do entrepreneurship. A lot of people online say, like, if you're not an entrepreneur, then you're not doing something good. But there has to be people who work corporate jobs, and there has to be people who um, enjoy working and following people who have that leadership and have that huge vision, because being a leader is not going to be an easy path, and also being a person who is a follower is not an easy path, and everyone is called to do something different, and being able to understand that is very important. So I like the honesty on that, because I think a lot of people say, oh, you have to do this or you're not going to be successful, or you're not going to live a fulfilling life. But everyone's different, and having that understanding is very, very important.
Yeah. Yeah, my problem with the corporate world, not that there's a problem with working for a company, but my problem was that it puts you in a position where you ultimately feel like lesser than. Like by working for another company, you're almost surrendering some of your control. And there's nothing wrong with working for another company, but when I was working for corporate, I was like, I'm going to be the one who's in the position of power because there's a reason I'm here in this job. They hired me for a reason. So instead of being afraid of like pushing back and suggesting we do things a different way, or instead of being afraid of asking for a raise or a promotion or more than what they offer me, I'm going to come with that because these people need me and they want me here. That's why I am here. So I'm going to ask for what I feel like I deserve, and I'm going to bring the ideas that I have to the table. Otherwise, I have enough confidence in myself because I'm here for a reason that if this doesn't work out, what's the worst case scenario? They're probably going to say no. But if this doesn't work out, I have enough confidence in myself and the resume I've built that I'm just going to go and get another job and do something that's a better fit. So that's also me empowering people who do work for companies, which is a great role and a great path. Like you need to take back the power that you deserve because unfortunately, especially with bigger companies, they will take the power away from the employees. You just become a number, but you're there for a reason. You have to remember that this is your life and your career. So you need to step into the driver's seat with your career, and that means bringing ideas to the table. That means asking for what you deserve, and that means having faith and confidence that if it doesn't work out with where you are right now because of what you've done in your past, there will be an opportunity in the future. So even that mindset shift just like helped me progress from like job to job within a specific company. It helped me show up for interviews with other companies in a place of confidence. And yeah, like I was when I went self-employed, I had a handful of recruiters in my network I knew, and they were like, "Dude, like if you go self-employed, it's going to be hard to get back into the corporate world if you want to." And I was like, "Dude, I have Amazon on my resume. That was the reason I wanted to go to Amazon so I could have that on my resume. It's like I can easily come back into the corporate world if I want." And even today, like however many years later, I was with Amazon. I left Amazon in 21. I haven't worked for a corporate company in 4 or 5 years. I could easily go back and work for one of those companies, even though I've been so detached from the work. So, yeah, just give yourself the credit and kind of stand up for what you deserve. You have to, whatever avenue you are in life, like just because you're not like deemed a leader of an organization, each of us does have a role of leadership in our life, even if it's just leadership of our own life. But if you just sit back and you're passive and you play victim to the other people who are above you or who are in your environment, then you're never actually going to end up showing up and living the life that you're capable of.
Very well said. Very well said. I think that, yeah, that mindset shift definitely, like, everyone has to, like, it's like taking responsibility almost in a sense, but
Yeah,
also being able to lead yourself and having the faith in God, but also the faith in yourself that you can achieve more than you think you can achieve. I think a lot of people put limiting belief system on themselves from, I don't know, their parents or maybe their family or their friends, saying like, "Oh, you can't do that," or maybe like, "Oh, it's too hard," or all these different limiting beliefs, and then they internalize that and thinking that they can't. But the first step into believing or doing something that you don't think you can is believing that you can do that, and being able to shift that is extremely important. So I think it's very powerful the way that you said that.
yeah,
Entrepreneurship, I guess, in a sense, isn't just about business, but it's about people. So, and especially for you, so I kind of want to talk about how you're helping people through your coaching, specifically. So I guess your
yeah.
work focuses on a lot of men coming internal struggles and physical struggles. So I kind of want to talk about the heart of that mission. So yeah, let's just start there.
Yeah, totally. I just want to thank you again just for creating that platform, like to get a message out to men who are looking to grow in every area of their life, especially with God leading it first. And, that inspires me to want to show up and do the same for men. And I can be kind of clear about who I typically am best positioned to serve, just so for whoever's listening, like it makes more sense. But it's typically guys who are in their 20s and 30s. They're making like 75,000 to 100,000 plus already, but they know deep down that they have so much more potential. And whether you feel like you're just unmotivated or you're lacking discipline or you're going through the motions, you might feel like you're running to vices and trying to escape life through all these different avenues. You're distant from God, you're out of shape, or you just don't have like clarity and focus on where you're heading, then this is probably the person that I'm best positioned to serve. Like guys who they want to wake up with enthusiasm, they want to be passionate about what they're doing, they want to feel like they're stepping into their God given potential in every single area. And really, the way I try to serve people is just first and foremost to set them up every single day in a place that they can start the day with consistency. They can prime their body, their mind, and their spirit. So I like to do something I call it like the morning momentum blueprint. So basically, the goal here is it's a very step by step process where we prime your body, your mind, and your spirit. And the goal is to get you to a place where you start the day with focus time, you start the day in quiet, connected to God. you're setting some intention, you're building momentum for the day, and you're doing all of this before you're able to be distracted or anybody is able to disrupt your time. And rather than now being in a place where you feel like you're a victim or like you're responding to what's coming at you in life, you're rather living it intentionally. So that's the first thing that I try to help people with, is just really making sure that you're starting a day where you're priming yourself to be at your best. Can you remind me of your question? Because I think I kind of strayed from it a little bit.
No, no. I think I just was curious on like what the heart of your mission is
Yeah,
behind coaching men,
yeah,
especially young men.
yeah, totally. I think for me, like the change I experienced by putting God first in my life and then focusing on my personal development was so radical. I tell people it started first and foremost with a change of my character, which then impacted my relationships. I was able to be a better family member, a better friend. I was able to be better for my work colleagues. And then lastly, it impacted my career, where just even more doors and opportunities opened that were more aligned with where I felt like I was supposed to be going. So as I focused on those things, putting God first, becoming more aware mentally, taking care of my body, everything changed. And that was so transformational for me that I felt like I wanted to bring it to other men. And I see, especially when I was in corporate, I saw how obviously our focus the majority of time is on our job because that's what sustains us, it's where we make money. But the unfortunate part for most people is they end up being so consumed by their day-to-day job that they neglect everything else, their physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health.
Hmm.
And if the only thing you have is a job, which I felt like I that was the only thing I had for the longest period of time, then ultimately you have nothing. You have no life. I always told myself my job and my career was only second priority to actually support the life that I wanted to live. But then when I looked at my time and effort where it was being spent, the only place that it was being spent was on my career. So I had to figure out a way to shift and take care of my priorities, my physical, my mental, my emotional, my spiritual first. And actually, by doing that, that in turn created more opportunity for me to show up with more energy, focus, creativity, productivity in my day to day job. So that began flourishing more, which in turn led to the rest of my life flourishing more. So I really just want to create a space where I can help men get to that same place. I don't like the word balance. I like the word harmony. That means everything's working together, right? You don't need to be 10% equally allocated across all areas of life. It may be 70% of your effort related to work, but it just needs to make sure that all the different areas are working in tandem together. So that's number one, the biggest challenge, which is just is the management of time and schedule where most people struggle. But also there's these areas of, especially vices today, there's so many of them: drinking, smoking, porn, even social media. There's so many things to distract us from what we're supposed to be doing. And so many men get pulled into addiction and distraction that it keeps them from achieving their potential. So, because I actually walked and experienced basically all of those vices, and I saw kind of the chokehold that they had on my life and my ability to progress, and it was only when I removed those things that I was actually able to step into my potential in every area. That also inspires me to help men overcome those things and to kind of build the structure and the systems, but also change their mindset and understand the emotions and the beliefs that are keeping them dependent on those things.
Hmm. Yeah, that's important because I think a lot of people get distracted our world is very primed for distraction. It's not meant to um, optimize for success. It's very much like everyone is craving your attention. I heard a podcast episode by a guy named Chris Williamson, and he talked about how a lot of people think time is your most valuable asset, but it actually is attention because it's how you use that time that really matters. Like, yeah, you can't get time back, but if you're focusing your attention on social media and just consuming social media or whatever the vice might be, that's really what's taking your away. Because like everyone has 24 hours, but some people's 24 hours is like 1,000 or 100,000 times more productive than others. And it's because what they focus their attention on, what creates that exponential result. And you don't have to be like regimentedly productive to have a successful day. But I think a lot of people think like if you see someone online and they look like they have their life together, you think or you assume that every single moment of their day is productive. Like a lot of people look up to, like the business guys. I feel like there's a big percentage of people who just work and that's all they do. But I think a lot of people who are online who do like a lot of the business stuff, they work for a decent portion, but they also have like you said, the harmony of working out and taking care of their body and having a good connection with a brotherhood or a community, because that's extremely important as well. Like if you don't have that harmony, you're gonna fall apart. Like if you just have one thing. Um, so I think that's really beautiful how you put that. And yeah, when you help others, you often heal yourself as well. So I kind of want to talk on that and how your faith has matured in the process of, um, I guess, helping others mature in the process. Because I think that is it kind of goes hand in hand. So I guess one question to you is, how do you personally navigate through a spiritually dry season in life, and how do you stay faithful to God?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think when I was even beginning to seek God, I wanted to know if God was real or not. So the first thing that I saw was in His Word, it says, "Seek and you'll find." So I was like, okay, if I actually look, then I'm gonna find whether He exists or whether He not. I'll find whether He exists or whether He doesn't. But the only way I'll truly know within myself if God exists or if He doesn't is if I actually seek and I follow His Word, and then that will bring me to the answer or the lack thereof. And what that showed me is when you do seek God, He will eventually show up and be faithful to His promise of find when you do seek. And if you continue to do that throughout your life, you see God show up more and more and more. And His promises, He's always faithful to them. And it's like, what are the promises of God? Well, you need to actually read His Word to understand those promises. So He promises that He'll provide peace that surpasses. He promises He'll provide peace that surpasses all understanding. He promises that He'll work all things for good. He promises that even in our sufferings, we can glory in them because they produce perseverance and character. So now I know the promises of God, and even though I don't see the presence and the hand of God in my life right now, I know God is always faithful because when I did seek, He showed up. So once He's shown His faithfulness one time, you're now giving confirmation that He's going to continue to keep His promises and show His faithfulness again. And God is not just going to pour out all these blessings on you. Number one, you may not even be prepared for that blessing. So that's probably why this period of the in between is happening, because you're getting prepared to steward whatever it is God has for you. But also, God wants to see that you have faith. God never just gives you the plan from step 1 to step 10. He gives you step 1, and then He waits for you to move in faith. And when you move in faith, He reveals the next step, and He shows up because of your obedience. So it's a two-way street. Like a lot of people who don't know God or don't have a relationship with God or believe in God, they're like, I've never experienced anything with God in my life, or like had a radical encounter where I was like, this has to be God. And it's probably like, well, dude, you've never actually looked for God. And that's the beautiful thing about perfect love. God's perfect love is He makes it available, but He doesn't force it on you. So He's given you the gift. It's sitting there right there waiting for you, and you have an opportunity to go and take it and experience the goodness of what God has for you, or you leave it and He's not going to force it on you because that's not real love. So yeah, really what's helped me through those spiritually dry seasons is just to remember God's promises and God's faithfulness in my past. He always comes through on what He says He does. And I've really just gotten to a place of during those most challenging spiritual seasons, I know that's where the most work is being done and where the most breakthrough is being prepared. So I try to be even more intentional about coming to God in prayer every single day, every single night, and just asking the question like, God, how are you looking for me to transform and change? What are you calling me to do in this period of uncertainty, in this period of kind of silence, in this period of, call it not prosperity? So that's kind of where I return to. And I even saw a pastor at one of the churches I go to down here in Miami. She was saying, a friend asked her about her prayer life and like how often she prays, what it looks like. And the friend basically convicted her that like you need to be praying more because what God has for you is requiring a stronger prayer life. And I honestly feel like I'm in that same place in my life right now. And the bigger and bigger blessings have only come from me getting closer and closer to God and walking more in accordance with Him. So it's like if there's this next level, He probably wants me to go even deeper. So I'm
Mm,
always asking myself, like, what does that look like? But asking God too.
that's that's a good perspective. I think, yeah, that's beautiful. I kind of want to shift from personal to relational because faith changes how we approach love, leadership, and honestly, pretty much everything. You're soon to be married. Congratulations. And
Thank
marriage
you.
is not just a romantic thing, it's deeply spiritual. And I kind of want to talk about that. So, how did God lead you to your fiance, and how did you know that she was the one?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm excited too because this is kind of like my first time talking about it in a conversation with somebody. So her name is Laura, and we met while I was in Thailand in the fall and winter of 2022. I was out there. I had felt called by God to go out there with a buddy who was going, and the reason I went out is just because I felt like God was gonna work powerfully out there. And I saw my buddy Juan was going out there, and God was working so clearly in our relationship here in Miami when we first met, and he told me he was going to Thailand, and I was kind of thinking about it. And then Juan and I went to this concert up here, which was a Christian concert, the first one I've ever gone to. And just on that trip, there were so many encounters with people outside of the concert venue who weren't even going, where God and Jesus came up. And I was like, this is nuts. Like, God clearly wants to work through us and in us. So that was kind of my conviction to go to Thailand. So I went to Thailand, and it was at the same time I was starting my new social media account. So the account I'm on right now, I started in August of 2024. And long story short, the reason I started a new social media account is because I was on the old account. I was so frustrated. My engagement was terrible. Nothing was performing. I had tried a handful of different approaches. I invested with a couple of different guys who were helping me create content. Nothing was hitting. And I felt like God was telling me, He was like, dude, I'm the most important thing in your life. I'm the thing that's brought you the most radical transformation, and you're barely talking about me. So why would you expect me to bless this if I want you to bring the same change and transformation that I brought into your life to other people and be a light for them? Well, you need to talk about the main thing that changed your life, which is me. So at that time, that's when I started the new account, and started that right before going into Thailand. All that to say, when I got out to Thailand, that account was starting to grow pretty well. And yeah, I had noticed that this girl Laura was like always liking a lot of my content, but she would only like my stuff related to God, not like my classic meathead stuff in the gym. And so that stood out to me, and I saw her page, and I thought she was just a super cute girl. And I figured though, like if she had a relationship with God, there would be something about God there. And I had gotten to a point where I wasn't looking for a relationship. I was just trusting that God would provide if I was seeking Him first. And so, yeah, I had gotten to a point where like I knew I needed somebody who was really strong in their desire for God. And the level of that, I figured there would at least be a glimpse of that in their personal profile. So I didn't see anything there, and I didn't like reach out, and I don't know, something like a couple, like 10 days later or so brought me back to her profile, and I ended up seeing like this one Bible verse that she shared, and that was enough for me to just shoot her a message and basically say what's up. And we had a conversation, and I wanted to get to like know her better on FaceTime. And I had she was in the process of launching a new blog. I was obviously doing my thing with personal branding, so figured that would be a good topic for us to talk about. And she was kind of showing some interest in what I had been doing with my page. And I suggested we kind of have a conversation on like that personal branding type of thing. And she was like, that's awesome, but I'd rather hear about your journey with Jesus and like how you met Jesus. And I was like, oh, okay, like this girl's the real deal. And so we got on a FaceTime. Like the first time we chatted was about our testimonies and our walks with God. And
Amen.
it was just a very mature dating, because I had noticed in my past when there was potential, I would get excited and be enthusiastic about, okay, this could be. And what that would cause me to do is to rush into actually fall in love with the fantasy of what could be. So I was very intentional, and so was she, about just getting to know each other. And the more and more we got to know each other, we just saw how we were so much in alignment and God's hand was so present. And we took a couple periods during that basically 2 months of FaceTime, especially in the beginning, to surrender it back to God. So there was a period, especially in the beginning, like we had only FaceTimed like 2 or 3 times, and we weren't texting a ton, but enough where I was like, I can't even necessarily put a voice to the texts that are coming through from this girl. And that made me feel like there's a potential for me to create this fantasy and this character of who she is when I don't even know. So I felt like God was saying, you need to step away from having this texting conversation for a while. So basically what we did, we called it a communication fast. And for 1 week, we just didn't talk at all. And we both went to God, and we both basically prayed like, God, if this is from you, open the door. If it's not from you, close the door. And we kind of surrendered the desires of our heart. And we said, this seems like a great thing, but we each only want your will. And just like the abundant peace in knowing that came from God during that period of separation was crazy. And when we came back together to talk, like there was this deepness in our relationship that I didn't expect. She's from Philadelphia, so I was planning when I came back to the States to go visit her in Philadelphia, and I figured like meeting in person, that would kind of give us our final clarity on like if it may be meant to be. But there was just this radical deepness that came through our FaceTimes, especially over the last month and a half of 2024, where like we went so deep and God was just revealing himself so much. And kind of the reason I was able to know was she had this wisdom that was pouring into my life that was helping me go deeper in my purpose that I had never experienced from a woman before. And that was a large part of how I knew like this is most likely my person. And honestly, before I even knew her, or rather before I even met her in person, like I pretty much knew I was going to marry her. And then we met in person, and it was just like God's hand all over it. So I met her in person December 31st, face to face for the first time. And honestly, we had been like talking about our marriage we talked about, all the hard topics right out of the gate, like over FaceTime while I was in Thailand. But we kind of kept those topics away from our situation, because once again, we didn't want to like fantasize about it, like what we could be. But we did talk about like what we wanted: a partner, a marriage, a family. And yeah, once we got into January, we were together. We were talking about like what we wanted to do, how we wanted to proceed, how we felt God was calling us. And yeah, we knew like in February we were planning the wedding, and then I proposed in, we're still in April. Geez, I proposed in the middle of March, so like 2.5 months after I met her face to face, and we're getting married at the end of May. So it's been a short period of time, but it's just like all knowing with God. And the thing we did here that I have never done fully and perfectly, well, it hasn't been perfect, obviously. That's impossible. But what I didn't really do in my past relationships was like surrender every single thing to God. So that was really something we were intentional with, especially with the physical piece, is like, we're going to surrender this entire thing to you, God. We're going to wait It's not going to be like, well, this is allowed and this is not allowed. It's like sexual things are sexual things. It's all reserved for marriage. That was our mindset, at least going into it. And yeah, because of that obedience to God and being like, we want so much what you want. We don't want this to be because of our desires, but because of yours. That just brought this immense amount of clarity. And actually, what it shows is like when your heart is aligned with God, this comes from Psalm 37:4. It's like God will give you the desires of your heart, and He only gives you the desires of your heart, or rather, the desires of your heart only become the desires of God when you're first seeking Him and He's first in your life. Then your desires become in alignment with His. So we were in that place, which was a beautiful thing, and God continued to confirm it. We were like, okay, like this isn't just because of us. This is also God, and he brought that peace earlier than we expected. So, yeah, so blessed and thankful for what God's done, and just know He's going to work through our relationship in a radical way.
Or goosebumps, goosebumps. It's so powerful.
Yeah.
I, I think it's so powerful that you say, like, you guys went 1 week and you guys just gave it all to God. That's the most beautiful thing. I think oftentimes, like you said, you rush into relationships or you rush into things and you don't surrender to God. But the most beautiful thing to do is asking God if it's in His will, if it's what He says is right, and to be able to both surrender to Him. I don't know if there's any more form of beautiful, like that's just genuine, faithful love, and that's just so beautiful to hear. That it's super powerful, and yeah, it's amazing that you guys have that, and so much, so many blessings, and so much conviction, and I hear so much love. Just the way that you're explaining it, it's just amazing to hear the way that you explain it, and how so convicted, and how amazing. I mean, it's just I don't have any words for it really,
Yeah.
and
Thanks, man. Yeah,
yeah.
it's just a testimony to what God can do. And that was why I stepped away from that relationship a handful of years ago in the first place, because even though there were so many aspects that seemed good at the time, I knew what God had would be so much better. And it was only when I was seeking God, I wasn't looking for what I wanted. And I was trusting that what He had, what His plan was for me, would show itself eventually. Did He bring me something so much better? Even from like a physical perspective, I always had like a lot of qualities that I was looking for in a woman. And actually, as I got older, I kind of started surrendering most of those. I used to be like, I need her, like, she definitely has to be able to cook and all these things. And I started letting go of that a little bit because I realized like this is what I want, but not necessarily what's best for me. But even from like a physical perspective, just like the small details that she has are like so ingrained in like what I desire from even like a physical perspective. And it's not like this lusting perspective. It's just like, to me, almost this is what pure beauty and like God's hand looks like. And like all of those little details, and then like all these ones I couldn't even think of are there with her. So it's just like one of like the incredible ways that God's hand shows up.
It's so beautiful. I mean, you're stepping into marriage, building a business, mentoring men. All of these points are leading to something larger. And I kind of want to end on one particular question for you, and kind of wrap this up. But I guess legacy, or something to be remembered up, is not built in the ordinary obedience. And I kind of want to talk about that. So I guess lastly, my final big question for you is, what would you say to a man listening who's quietly struggling, who wants to change their life, but just does not know where to begin?
Yeah. Yeah, I think from the outside, when you're not close to God, it's really hard to actually see this perspective. But if you're struggling, the most powerful thing you can do is pursue God with all your heart and trust that if you keep showing up and seeking every single day, He's going to show up as well.
Mhm.
What does that look like? That just means understanding the nature of God by reading His Word, and then seeing how Jesus calls you to live, read the Gospels, and starting to apply that to your life and live in that same way. And that's the easiest way to meet God in the fastest amount of time. and then develop a prayer life where you're sharing your heart honestly and openly every single morning and night whenever you can pray, but definitely at least in the morning. So I would say that. And then, yeah, I mean, getting clear on like who do you want to be, but I think you need to get out of the slump, like to be able to think clearly first. And really what that looks like to get out of the slump, dude, you just need to get right physically. That's the easiest place. It's like the grunt work. If we were to take our brains out, like all the physical stuff could still be done. So like set some habits, set some routines, create some discipline and some structure. It's like I'm going to go to the gym this many times a week. I'm going to eat well, and I'm going to, stay off my phone for the first hour, for the last hour of the day. I'm going to journal. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to read. Decide to do some things that are going to nurture your body and your mind, and start small. Start with something where you can actually be consistent. So if that's just going to the gym 2 times a week and then getting outside for a walk every other day, then start there. You want to get to a place where with whatever you're attempting to do, you can do with 100% consistency. Now you're consistent there. You've built confidence. You've built self-belief because you said you were going to do something and you're doing it. Now you can add that next phase. And it's like, okay, now I'm going to focus on my nutrition. Monday through Friday, I'm going to cook all of my meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And you add that phase. You get consistent with that. And then you add the next thing. It's like, okay, great. I have belief. I have my confidence because I've been able to do what I said. Now I have a little bit more belief that I can do something a little bit more difficult. And as you build that healthy body, what that is going to do is it's going to release stress and anxiety. It's going to put you in a place where your mind is clear, you have more focus. And when your mind is clear, when your mind is quiet, your thoughts aren't going crazy. That puts you in a place where you're able to hear better from God. And prayer is like a two-way street. It's me communicating and sharing open and honestly, but it's also me listening and just being silent and kind of looking for that direction of God, which is ultimately God's spirit within us, the Holy Spirit. That's kind of like that gut feeling, that conscious that you get that's guiding you. But if your mind is going crazy, you have all these racing thoughts, then you're not really able to hear clearly from God. So creating a healthy body to get to that place, and then stewarding a quiet mind through things like journaling and meditation, even doing some breath work just to get to that place of stillness, that's going to put you in the best place to build a relationship with God. So pursue God, but pursue God first, and then get your physical body right and your mental health right. But really, you getting your physical health right and your mental health right is going to dramatically improve your ability to get close to God, because God says your body is a temple for me. So if we're treating our body as a temple, we're going to properly fuel, we're going to take good care of our body and our mind. And if the temple is taken care of, like, it's a lot easier for God to dwell in that place and us to actually see him in that place if it's properly stewarded versus, you walk into the temple, there's a bunch of garbage and rubbish everywhere, like you're searching for God. But if it's clean, if it's clear, then it's easy to hear God.
It's amazing. Jack, your life is a testimony to what happens when a man surrenders his strength to the Lord. And you've shown so many people that healing, being vulnerable, having purpose, having a brotherhood are all possible. That the call to build God's temple is not just for specific people, but everyone who's willing to say yes to that. So I really appreciate you coming on and talking to me about this. Where can people find you? What is there anything that is happening in the near future that you want to share?
Yeah, totally. I just want to say thanks so much to you, and thanks so much to everybody listening. Best place to find me is on Instagram at Jack Landry. If you just search Jack Landry, my handle is Jack P. Landry. And I actually want to just make something available quickly for your audience. So I'm really want to offer like two things just for everybody listening, something I typically like reserve for my one-on-one clients. But the first is what I talked about earlier. It's like my morning momentum blueprint. So if anybody wants kind of that outline on this is how you prime your body, your mind, and your spirit to get in a great place to crush every single day, I'll tell you how you can get that in a second. And then the second thing I want to offer is basically what I call like my Move Different strategy session, which is we kind of sit down and we look at where you are in every single area of life: physical, mental, spiritual, emotional. We see where you are now, what obstacles are keeping you from where you want to be, and we basically come up with a step-by-step game plan you can take to get there. So that's typically something I kind of keep for my top clients as well. But happy to do that for anybody who's here listening and feels like that would be value. If you want to have access to either of those, you can just message me Move on Instagram, or actually they can message me Alan, even better, Alan. Message me Alan, so I know you're coming from his show. And yeah, we're just happy to help, happy to chat with you. And once again, Instagram is Jack Landry or Jack P Landry.
Cool.
Thanks so much.
I'll leave a link in the bio in the description of the podcast so that you guys can check it out. Thank you guys all for tuning in on this week's episode, and I'll see each and every one of you next week. God bless you.